truth is there's a stench around a whole range of issues in Canberra.
I've seen these integrity commissions in my own home state of New South Wales, and I've got to say, I haven't been impressed.
Together, we can and will establish a National Anti-Corruption Commission.
We're working constructively with the government. They'll have a bill shortly, and I suspect we'll be in a position to support that.
After years of political wrangling, the full detail of how a Labor government will tackle allegations of Commonwealth corruption is now on the public record.
I present the National Anti-Corruption Commission Bill 2022.
It is the biggest reform to public integrity at a Commonwealth government level in Australia for probably half a century.
The May election campaign was fought against the backdrop of a New South Wales Premier's spectacular political demise after she'd been hauled before public hearings at the state corruption watchdog.
It pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign.
The question of whether the same could happen to a federal politician, one of the most contentious issues.
I've seen the lives destroyed by a commission such as that, which becomes a kangaroo court.
That language prompted a rare rebuke from an outgoing state commissioner.
Those buffoons who have repeatedly described this commission as a kangaroo court, it is deeply offensive.
Some of those vehemently opposed, now out of the job.
It's not the approach to have politicians being subject to public hearings.
The coalition's model in the last parliament was inadequate and inappropriate.
The new member for Kooyong is part of a group of new independent MPs who rejected the coalition's proposed integrity agency as a toothless tiger and criticised the former government for sitting on its hands.
The opposition has previously used language which is inappropriately emotive and charged.
Labor's model isn't promising open slather on public hearings.
The Commission will be able to hold public hearings in exceptional circumstances and if satisfied it is in the public interest to do so. The default position is that hearings will be held in private.
I think the phrase exceptional circumstances needs work, and either it needs to be removed or it needs to be defined, ideally, and that will be one of the things that I'm sure the crossbench of both houses will be concentrating on.
Exceptional circumstances provision has caused trouble in Victoria. It has reduced dramatically the number of public hearings that have been held compared with New South Wales.
Labor's deliberately giving the Commission discretion on how it manages its own affairs, including whether hearings are open.
The ability to hold public hearings is part of the general deterrence against misconduct in public life.
Labor's model has two features that the coalition's lacked: the power to launch its own independent inquiries and to delve back in time and investigate matters that predate its existence. Labor's watchdog would also investigate any outside parties involved in corruption allegations, not just politicians and public servants, but it won't be able to make findings of corruption against them.
I think that the definition that's been put into how those third parties can be looked at and examined is potentially, just on first reading, a little bit more limited than people would like. Until today, every piece of legislation that had been brought to the Australian Parliament on anti-corruption activities in the last 10 years had been brought to that Parliament by the crossbench.
Those crossbench bills helped lay the foundation for many of the powers found in the Albanese government's proposal today. In 2018, a coalition government barely clinging to power under new Prime Minister Scott Morrison was under immense pressure from independents and its own backbench for an anti-corruption commission.
We suspect that most of your backbench are in favour of it.
Weeks later, the Morrison government came up with an alternative with significant differences to the crossbench plan.
This is a real proposal with real resources, real teeth.
It is not a body that will conduct public hearings, and it will not write reports where it makes findings of corruption.
The Prime Minister insisted he had a model ready to go, but refused to introduce it into the Parliament unless Labor promised to back it in.
If you wish to support a serious proposal, here it is.
As the federal election drew closer without the government's bill being introduced, one of its own backbench crossed the floor to try to force a debate.
The absolute lioness of the 46th Parliament.
Standing with them again today as the new government delivered.
Bridget Archer, I applaud you.
And in the wake of the election result, where Bridget Archer survived in her ultra-marginal electorate and others in safe seats didn't, The new opposition leader is softening the coalition's stance.
We are working sensibly and constructively with the government to implement an integrity commission.
And on that key sticking point,
I think, frankly, the balance is there. There's the ability for public hearings to take place where it's appropriate to do so. There's the ability for private hearings to take place where there's the ability to do so.
For the Commission to be a success, it does need broad parliamentary support. Without it, there's a risk it could be seen and in fact used in exercises in political payback, and its very existence and funding could be threatened in the future, however unpopular such a move would be. For a bill that's being welcomed, experts argue there's still plenty of room for improvement, particularly on protections for people sharing information and raising allegations with the Commission.
The whistleblower protections in this bill are not strong. They are as weak as the existing weak defective whistleblowing laws that we know that the Commonwealth already suffers from.
The Attorney-General is promising wider whistleblower reforms, but that's still down the track.
So that's still a gap in the system. The next major step really does need to be making those whistleblower protections quality protections and then actually making sure the machinery is there to enforce them.